So when I was going through bankruptcy, what did you think?
It was sad.
Why?
Because you were sad. I mean, you were devastated emotionally and financially, and it was sad.
It was sad. It also taught me some valuable lessons. Guys, today what I want to actually do is, I'm going to go over to the house, but I wanted to sit down and just talk a little bit about bankruptcy. When I filed bankruptcy, it was honestly a huge relief to some degree. That being said, it was one of the hardest times in my life. I've often talked a little bit about how when I lost my fitness center, it wasn't the fact that I was broke or that I was had no income. It was really the loss of a dream, because from the age of literally 12 years old, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I wanted to own a gym. And when that was taken away from me, I didn't have a plan B. I'm the type of entrepreneur that's plan A all the time, the only thing that I think about, the only thing that I focus on. But during that point, when everything was kind of collapsing, it was brutal. In terms of income, I was not making any. I was taking money off of my credit cards to pay my employees. I was also a ton of money in debt because we had a bunch of loans, right? We had equipment loans, we had leases, and all of these things, when you're a new business, are tied to you personally. Nobody's going to give your business credit if you don't have a substantial business or one that has a credit history. And so both Linda and myself, when we were starting our new group fitness concept, we had to basically sign for all of these different loans, and we were personally guaranteeing everything. By the time I filed bankruptcy, I and Linda together, we basically had $500,000 worth of debt. So house update, nothing really to report other than we're still framing. It's been 2 months now, and we're close though. By the end of this week, we should have all of the framing done, all of the plywood on, and we'll start actually drying it in. And then the really cool thing is that the doors and windows are going to be going in, I believe, in 3 weeks, and so that's kind of exciting. Try and find a shady spot inside the Alpha crib and see if I can set this somewhere. So anyway, Linda and I both co-signed for all of the expenses. At that point, like I said, I was driving a beer cart on weekends just to put gas in my car. I was taking money off of my credit cards to pay my staff. They're basically salaries, and I was broke. I'm gonna try and use a bucket. How about that? Will that work? All right. Okay, this feels good. So anyway, at that point, I was driving a beer cart. I was making no money. The money that I was making driving the beer cart, I was putting gas in my car and giving my then girlfriend, now wife, some money for groceries and rent. And the thing that was really sort of hard for me at that point, I'm a very prideful individual. And the fact that I didn't have the money to basically support myself was super embarrassing. When we finally closed everything, there was no other option. It was all right, this isn't going to work. And so right now we are on the hook for all of these expenses. Like I said, it was about $500,000 collectively. And the crazy thing is that if she would file and I didn't, they would all come after me. Then it would just be my debt, right? If it was expunged from her. And so we made the decision together, all right, we have to file bankruptcy. And so we each basically at that point went our separate ways, and I met with a bankruptcy attorney. And the thing that really sucked is that I didn't have enough money to pay the attorney. The attorney, I think, at the time was $1,200 to handle the bankruptcy. So I actually had to borrow money from a friend to basically pay for my bankruptcy attorney, which was, once again, not exactly amazing. And I ended up paying him back, so don't worry about that. But yeah, I didn't want to go to my wife or my then girlfriend, because at the time, everything was so bad, and I was so embarrassed as a man that I didn't want to go and be can you lend me $1,200? I just didn't want to do that. She was already helping me out, and so. Long story short, I filed bankruptcy. When you file bankruptcy, they do a means test to figure out, all right, you've got all this debt. This is how much money you're generating or bringing in on a monthly basis. How long would it take you to pay off your debt? And essentially, it worked out to I was making I think it was literally $10 a day. It was nothing, right? And so I had $500,000 in debt, and it was pretty easy. The attorney's yeah, no problem. But one of the things that's really was hard, there's a lot of hard things about that. situation. But one of the things that really kind of is a little bit unnerving is that when you actually file bankruptcy, you've got to basically disclose all of your creditors or people that you basically could potentially owe money to, or people that could come back and say, no, he owes me money, don't throw out this debt, he owes me money, you owe it to me, like whatever. And so I had to list all of the credit card companies, you know, all of the auto companies. Like I think at the time I had my Toyota RAV4, I had to claim that. You had to basically talk about what assets you have, because if you've got too many assets, you know, they're going to make you sell them or not allow you to file. I had nothing. I was completely broke. I was destitute. I was living with my girlfriend. I didn't have anything. I didn't have any money to my name. I had nothing, literally nothing. And so I had to list all of the people. I also had to list all of the people that invested in my fitness center, the Move It concept that we did. And there were like 4 or 5 people that I basically had to list. When you go in for your bankruptcy hearing, the thing that's really unnerving is that these people could potentially show up to say, no, I have a claim against this person. And so going into my court hearing for bankruptcy, I was worried that some of these people were actually going to show up and I was going to have to face them. I didn't. They didn't show up. But some of them showed up for my business partner Linda's, because she pissed one person off in particular, and he was basically out for blood. This is uncomfortable. I gotta do a better job thinking about these places. Do you like these? Do you like these that are a little bit more like just raw and unedited, unfiltered? If you do, drop me a big like and say, yo, Alpha, we dig it. Actually, there's so many embarrassing things about it and just so many shots to your ego along the way. But the hardest thing and the worst thing about all of it is that when you've got crippling debt, it is absolutely the worst thing ever. It robs you and your life of joy. At least it did mine. It's all consuming. And that is one of the reasons why, you know, to this day, right, I am so debt adverse, right? I don't want debt for any reason. I don't want it for a house. I don't want it for a car. Like, I hate debt. And one of the things that I told myself when I filed bankruptcy, I was like, all right, if I get out of this mess, I am never going to overextend myself again. I am never going to be in a position of weakness, because for me, that's what it felt like. For my entire life, I never had enough money. I literally was struggling with money from the age of 0. We were on welfare when I was growing up, and so money's always been this like thing that's just had this like incredible power over me, and basically me not feeling good. For me, money has always been this thing of shame, if I'm being honest, because I never had enough money. I never felt like I was as valuable as other people, and I struggled, you know. Growing up, I, you know, shopped for all my clothes at like thrift stores and stuff like that. Not that that's bad, but, you know, you're young and you don't want to like admit that when you're, you know, going to school. It felt like all of my friends had more money. They did have more money, and I was just embarrassed. You know, I've mentioned it before. There was a point in my life one day where I asked my mom for $1.25, right? And I've told the story before because it's something that sticks in my mind and it really affects me, like to this day even. I went to her, I was like 12 years old. I said, Mom, you know, I want to go get a piece of pizza with Nikki. And I was like, can I have $1.25? She literally didn't have $1.25 extra to give me. And she looked at me and she just said, I'm sorry, we don't have it. And that was the point in my life when I thought, this is fucking crazy. This is insane, right? And I don't know, it's always, but money has always been this thing, right? This thing of shame, because like I said, I've never sort of understood it. In terms of when I was growing up, you know, one of the downsides of growing up poor is that you don't have like financial role models around you. Everybody that I knew was like struggling or living paycheck to paycheck. And so when I finally like started my business, I was like, yes, you know, it was such a prideful thing for me, because, you know, I was very proud that I was able to do it. But when things started going bad and I started realizing that, okay, I'm not getting out of this, you know, and financially I need to file bankruptcy, it was heartbreaking, because I am not somebody that wants to basically get a handout for anything. I'm also not somebody that, you know, relies on other people for help. But during that time, there was no other option. There was no other solution for me. And I vowed that if I ever get out of this, I will never be in debt again. If I can't afford to do something, I'm not going to do it. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know that someday I'd be able to build a big house or anything like that. But that is the reason. And one of the things that I learned is that you've gotta be financially smart and you can't overspend. And that's one of the things that I try to basically get across. Guys, if you can't afford something, you should not be buying it. For me personally, I never wanted to be in a position of weakness. I never wanted to be in a position where I was worried or thinking about how I was gonna pay my bills, right? Now, when I started making a little bit of money and I built my first house, I couldn't pay for it all in cash. I paid some of it in cash, but I got a construction loan for the rest. And I remember on my birthday, like 3 years ago, I went into the bank and I saved up my money and I paid off my mortgage, right? And it was like one of the biggest accomplishments for me because, you know, growing up and even today, I don't know many people that don't have a mortgage, right? I don't know people that don't have debt. You know, now the truth is that, you know, most people do, and it's not necessarily a bad thing to have it, but for me, it just never felt right. It never felt good. I never wanted to be in a position that I owed anybody anything. Now my philosophy when it comes to business or life is that if I can't afford to pay cash for it, I don't want to do it because I don't want to have any more sleepless nights. I don't want to have to worry about, oh, what if the market tanks? What if this happens? And the other thing is that with interest rates, when you look at your bill and you see how much damn money you're giving these mortgage companies or whoever, the auto companies or whatever, right? It's crazy. You're making them rich. And so if you can put the money in your own pocket or use that cash or save the money, they would be paying these other people for interest, making them rich. If you can use that for yourself or invest it yourself or deploy it in some other way, why wouldn't you want to do that? And so for me, I've also, okay, let me clarify something else. The reason why I'm able to pay cash for things is because A, I live below my means, and B, I make good money, right? If I didn't make as much money as I do in terms of like cash flow, I would not be able to do what I do. But you know, the thing is, I am. And so the way that I look at it right now, I'm in a good earning position, right? I'm still earning. I am not like capped in terms of my salary. Everything's not going away, hopefully, you know, tomorrow or next month or next year. I'm going to continue to generate revenue. Now, the truth is that YouTube revenue has gone way down. Money that I was making from YouTube, like sponsorship, has gone down because the views are down, so they're paying less. And so that has definitely taken a hit. But Pete and Pedro has gone way up. And so it's kind of like I'm squeezing a balloon at this point, but I'm always thinking about it. I'm always worried and focusing and making sure that I can afford to do whatever I'm doing. And that is one of the reasons why with this house that I'm building, it was like, oh shit, because once again, I'm paying cash for it. And so when somebody says, hey, you're over budget $1 million or $1.5 million, like in my head, this is not the way that I do things. Now, the truth is that I've got, you know, a home equity line of credit that I could pull from my current house, but I was not planning on touching that. I wanted to finish the house. And I'm on a very regimented savings plan. Like every single month, I'm putting money into my house fund so that when it's all finished, there's no debt, right? No debt whatsoever. And so, you know, that's one of the things though. It's almost like I've got post-traumatic stress syndrome. You know, you hear about people that have been in a war or a battle and they suffer adverse side effects like long-term after the situation was over. I actually was sent by my assistant Debbie an article about how entrepreneurs, when a business fails, go through some type of PTSD, right? Or they have to file bankruptcy. Like, it's real. And the thing that I also just want to mention, because it's kind of appropriate at this juncture, is when you see me getting like upset and I cry, because I cry a lot. Whenever I talk about, I'm not going to today, whenever I talk about sort of just, you know, being thankful, or I'm so overcome with, how do I even put this? I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful that I'm happy. I'm so thankful that I'm fulfilled emotionally, financially, personally, professionally, because after my fitness center failed, I didn't know that that was ever going to happen. And the fact that I just kept trying things and finally figured some things out, it is not lost on me. And the other thing that I'm so incredibly thankful for is that I didn't find success when I was younger. I feel so fortunate that I had to struggle. You know, and when I see some of these younger dudes that are just having and finding success like super young and early, I almost feel like it's a little bit of a curse, because if you've hit your pinnacle or peak when you're 20 or 22 or 18 or 16, that's going to do a number on you psychologically and emotionally. And debt for me is one of those things that for my entire life, and money and being strapped for cash has always been such a hard thing and something that's always been present. And like I mentioned before, and I know this is all over the place, I'm just kind of brain dumping about this situation. When I had $5,000 in the bank for the first time, that was my FU money, because for the first time, I didn't think about money one day. And then the next day, same thing happened. And that was the point in my life when everything got better. $5,000 was my fuck you money. And that's why I'm so bullish and passionate about people basically having and finding that number and working towards it. Because when you have enough that you don't have to think about money, now I'm not saying that you can retire like forever and never have to work again, but when you've got enough sitting there that you don't have to worry if you lose your job for the next month or 2 months or 3 months, or you can pay your bills or you can eat, it's incredibly powerful. And it was for me. If it all went away tomorrow and I had to shut down and sell everything, I and my family would be cool. And I could basically just be like, all right. And that's a very powerful thing to realize and understand. Now, I'm still like working and striving and trying to basically build more wealth and more, success, because it's what you do. It's what I do as an entrepreneur. You build, you work, and you're never going to be satisfied. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be present. It doesn't mean that you can't appreciate, what you've done. But for me, it's always about striving and just wanting more. And I know that if you're not an entrepreneur, and I know that if you're not, into that, you might not understand, but it's just about the process. And for me, that's what it's about. I never wanted to be successful because I wanted to build a nice house or have a nice watch or drive a nice car. That was never it. For me, I just wanted to feel valuable. I wanted to feel valued. I wanted to feel like I was making a difference in people's lives. That to me is what success looks like. Now, along the way, I've been able to buy some nice things just because I have it, but it's not like it matters, to be completely honest. I've been broke and I've been not broke. Not broke is better, but making things and material possessions the goal is absolutely not something I would recommend, because it's futile. You're never truly going to find happiness. You're never truly going to find peace, right? It's about something more. It's about what is it? What is that thing that's going to matter the most to you? For me, right now, it's about spending time with people that I love, taking care of my family members and people that I care about, and being happy and being stable and not worrying about money every single day. And bankruptcy, it was one of those things that honestly, it was kind of like I got to press the hard reset button on my life. And for the first time, when that happened, when I finally got my discharge papers in the mail and be like, all right, all your debts are forgiven, it was like, oh my God, it was so incredibly liberating. I felt like 10,000 pounds was just taken off of my shoulders. And the other thing is that I got a credit card like the next day. That's one of the things. If you learn your lesson, then good. But some people don't learn their lesson. When you file bankruptcy, credit card companies know that you can't do it for another like 7 years. So everybody is sending you credit card offers. My first credit card was a Capital One, right? $300. That was the limit. But that was the point at which I started to rebuild my credit, right? And so I would spend on it, I'd pay it off. Spend on it, pay it off. Spend on it, pay it off. And then they'd start raising your limit little by little, and you keep doing the same thing. And honestly, that was how I basically rebuilt my credit. And then when you get a mortgage and you get a car and when you get these things, that's how you rebuild yourself. It's a process, and it happens. It takes time, and it takes you being very disciplined and understanding that you need to be responsible. My spending, the reason why I filed bankruptcy, it wasn't because my spending was out of control or I was buying all sorts of like nice things on credit. It wasn't that. It was that I was trying to facilitate and sustain a business that basically needed to be shot. And so finally we were able to shoot it, and I was able to basically press that hard reset button. But one of the things and the reasons why I pay cash for things is because I've got that PTSD. I also swore that I would never get into a bad financial situation again. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience with bankruptcy and tell you kind of why it happened, and also kind of some of the lessons and things that I've learned throughout the process. And that's it. I also took you on a little road trip and tour all around my little town. But if you dug this, why don't you drop me one of these and say, yo, Alpha, brain dumps are all right. So are random ranty videos.